Hello everyone, my name is Naveen Richard and I am a comedian of the stand-up variety, but also I've acted in a few different web series as well as have written some of these shows as well. So yeah, stand-up and sketch comedy and um, acting in shows and things like that. So, but all of them have to do with comedy, maybe a little bit of drama here and there. Yeah, it's just for the sake of range, I guess. But yeah, and basically I studied law, and I started doing comedy while I was still in law college. And when I figured that I was able to pay my bills doing comedy, just about, I realized, why don't I just stick with this? I also realized that if I was going to be a lawyer, I'd probably be a okay lawyer. I'm like, okay, my heart might not be in it, but I can maybe get by. I'm not too unintelligent. I can manage. But then I realized as I started doing comedy, I was like, oh, this is okay. I'm pretty okay. I'm not great, but I seem to at least have my heart in this. So when that started paying the bills, it's like, okay, I think I'd be a better comedian than I would be a lawyer. So that's how I got into it. All right. So what you want to do is start off somewhere familiar. You take the audience and you tell them, hey, you know this place? And they're like, yeah. You guys want to follow me? Let me take you to this place that you guys might know this place. And they're like, okay, yeah, let's go there. But of course, they know they're watching comedy, so they know it's gonna go somewhere else, and they're gonna try to imagine in their mind what place you're gonna take them to with this joke, right? Because this is, I mean, everyone is slightly funny. At least sometimes they try to be funny. So then, when you start them off there, they'll try to, I think, subconsciously assume where you're gonna take them. They sometimes try to, because every audience member in the crowd is of a different intelligence level. So they're all going to try to jump to some assumption of where the joke is going to end up, where you're going to take them. But the idea is to take them somewhere really unexpected with the joke. And there are formulas you can use, of course. It's like, you say something familiar, but a little bit more exaggerated, but still true. And then you surprise them with the third thing, right? But what that third thing is, how many levels of thought are you gonna, the third level is the joke, but even in that third level, the first two or three ideas you might come up with would probably be the same things that the audience comes up with as well, that they can probably use their imagination and come up with their level of skill. And then you go a little further, and that's probably where comedians would go for their jokes as well, in terms of the weirdness and the surprise element of that joke. Now, you could stop there and you'd get a good laugh, but at least I try to go, and most comedians, not just me, I think most comedians, once they're trying to push their craft, they're like, let's go past the first thought, the second thought, and then the third or fourth, or however far you can take them, right? So sometimes you can even, with the punchline, you start off with a slightly further thought, okay, which is what the audience would not see coming. Maybe another comedian's, if it's really surprising, and then a comedian laugh. The only times a comedian doesn't laugh at another comedian's joke is if the comedian kind of saw that joke coming. So then you take them there, and then you can go further. Now that you've taken them to someplace weird, and if they're enjoying themselves there, you can go even weirder. You can go with the sixth thought, the seventh thought, and further away, and see how far you can push it, and how far the audience comes along on this little surprise trip of yours. What I prefer to watch is probably what I prefer to do as well, is relatable humor, but turned into abstract jokes. It starts off, like I said, someplace familiar, so that way everyone's on board, and then you take them somewhere fun. And that's why I like comedians like Brian Regan, who are very, people don't know about him as much around the world as they do in the US, but he's one of those comedians, like all the other comedians love watching him, because he can take something that's right in front of you, and he can surprise you like no other comedian can, and even comedians don't see where he's going because he's really genuinely having fun with just like spider webs. He'll talk about, a bit about spider webs, and people be like, "What? Yeah, how?" It's a joke about walking into spider webs, and I think every comedian inherently also wants to do relatable humor. Sometimes people we end up running. We're like, "Oh, I guess that's it. I can't notice anything anymore." No, I think it's just that sometimes we take ourselves too seriously in the attempt to push the boundary. We forget actually what genuinely made us get into this in the first place. It's just silly, relatable things. So that's what I like watching, these silly, relatable things. Silly and relatable. Yeah, you're right. A joke has to be organic, ideally. Although I have seen comedy which is scripted and yet it gets laughs. I think there's a way to engineer your jokes. You can engineer your jokes, use the right formulas, and get an audience to laugh at them. And you will get certain kinds of laughs. You'll get like, oh, nice, oh, nice, wow, that was a good one. Wow, I didn't see it, But then there's another kind of laughter, which it's like a cough-inducing kind of laughter. We're like, that kind of laughter, which is my favorite kind of laughter. That's where I hope to take the audience often, is into fits of coughs with their laughs. For that, it has to be organic. That said, a joke can start off so organic the first 2-3 times you do it, and then the fourth or fifth time you do it, it ends up feeling scripted because you're going through the motions of the joke. So you have to be careful. So for the joke to be organic, yeah, the joke needs to have originated. The first time you did the joke, it should have ideally made you laugh as well, because you're not always going to be around comedians trying out your jokes. So first, when you write the joke, it should at least make you go, huh, nice. As opposed to when you're writing down the joke, you'll be like, oh, nice, yeah, that's that's a clever way of phrasing it. But it should just make you laugh. It should be the kind of stuff that makes you genuinely laugh. There's this kind of comedy that makes you go, oh, it makes you kind of makes comedy that makes you go like, that's like, no, like this, like, yeah, this kind of comedy that makes you go like, yeah, it's really funny, dude. Like, you see why my eyebrows are like, yeah, it's really, that guy's like really good writing, dude, really good writing. And then there's the other kind of comedy when you ask, how's that guy? It's like, oh man, that guy is funny, dude. There's no, that man, you should watch that guy. And then you shove it into people's faces. That's the kind of comedy which where the comedian subconsciously uses formulas for sure, but he's not engineering the joke for the sake of engineering it. Even the engineering should come out organically in a way. Yeah, you have to be in the moment basically. So once you write the joke in hopefully an organic kind of way, when you're delivering the joke also, it has to feel natural. You have to be in the moment, because you could lose it. You could lose the feeling of the joke maybe the 10th time you say it. So it has to be funny to you, not only when you write it, but also when you perform it. So when you're writing stand-up, it's best to just be writing stand-up for months at a time, ideally. In my experience, when I started writing a web series or something like that, I try to just focus on that, because your brain just starts to get wired differently. Muscles in your brain work a certain way. It's like, I don't know, like training for a sprint as opposed to training for a marathon, or what your muscles are used to. So when I was writing a web series, I spent 8 months just writing that. Then through the day, everything that you do, you're picking up ideas for the web series. When you're in the shower and you get ideas, it's for that show. And the same works for comedy as well. So then when I start writing, and by the end of that web series, by the way, seems like I've forgotten how to write comedy, and then starting on writing stand-up comedy is kind of terrifying. So then I'll start writing stand-up again, and then slowly my brain's muscles get used to that. And then everything that you see and notice fits back into stand up, tags for your stand up or new observations for your stand up as well. So you have to train your mind to think in that genre, of the thing that you're writing. So if you're writing stand up, write stand up, it's easy to get distracted. You could try to be an Instagram influencer and try to do stand up comedy at the same time, and third or fourth thing as well, and your creativity is going all over the place, and your brain, I mean, maybe some people can handle it. maybe I'm not able to, but but I've noticed as well, one of these things is going to take a hit. One of these, the quality is going to drop because you're not giving it all your attention. So it's best to give one thing all your attention, and because this is sometimes happens when you start off and you get known for this one thing, so you say, okay, let me just do this 2 3 other things, and then this will slightly come up, but this will also go down. Now neither here nor there. I think Steve Martin is coming to my mind. Steve Martin started off doing stand-up, and all he did was stand-up. It took him a long time to even figure it out, and he had this huge stand-up special. He blew up because of it, and then he just stopped doing stand-up and started writing movies, and then his movies were really good scripts. No more stand-up though. He wasn't trying to do everything at the same time. It's okay if you do a movie one year and then try to do stand-up again or something, but ideally focus your attention. But I'm sure there are exceptions, some geniuses out there who can juggle everything together. Well, it's all about timing, because you could take the best joke ever written and say it word to word and ruin it because you didn't get the timing right, but you could also ruin it because you got a lot of other things wrong as well. But that said, you could take one of your own jokes, a joke that's worked 9 out of 10 times, and the 10th time it doesn't work because you try to force it and the timing didn't come out right. But the thing with timing is, it isn't about like, okay, half a second between this line and the next, and then 1.5 between that line and the next one. You could try to get that timing spot on, but still it wouldn't land, because you have to change the timing of the joke a little bit based on the energy of the crowd, where you're at, how your pace has been so far into the set. So if today you've been rushing the joke because the audience is enjoying it, going faster, then you've got to change the timing of the joke. So that's something that you only learn over experience, over reading a crowd, learning to be in the moment, learning to be malleable and change. So yeah, you have to be able to change the timing of the joke based on every situation that you're in, and that's what makes, I wouldn't say a professional different from an amateur, because sometimes when a professional can try to force the timing, be like, this is how it's always worked, and that's happened to me as well. I'm like, at the same timing, you just weren't in the moment at that time when the joke wasn't funny to you. When the joke is funny to you, even though it's the 20th time you're saying it, if it's really funny to you, if it's almost making you laugh, you'll get the timing right. It should be like, it's like the first time you're saying a joke. It's only when you try to say the joke the 10th time expecting it to work because it's always worked, that it doesn't work. It should feel like you're saying it for the first time, and the timing will come out right as well. Well, if you're talking about another comedian's performance, my favorite part is watching that comedian truly be himself in the moment, because I know these comedians, right? Usually when I'm watching a comedian, I know him personally, and more often than not, a lot of these comedians are actually much funnier in real life than they are on stage, because again, it's organic, it's in the moment and things like that. So like, an audience sees the comedian on stage, and I sometimes feel bad. I'm like, hey man, you're only getting to experience like 70% of this, who this guy really is. Because some of these guys make me crack up so much in real life. It's hilarious. They're like a machine gun, So there are moments on stage when comedians are up there, when even if they're doing one of their old bits, I can see them having fun with it. They're really enjoying the bit. They're really enjoying the audience. They're not rushing through it. They are not relying on on the way to their name, or the fact that this joke has always worked every time, but really they're finding some new timing with this joke, and you can see them laughing. They can't hold back their own laughter at their own joke. They say, "Oh, a comedian laughing at his own joke." If he's genuinely laughing, because you can fake it as well, and if a comedian is genuinely laughing along with the audience at what he's saying, then he's having a lot of fun, and he's finding something new there, and the audience feels like they're part of the process. That's my favorite part, and that's always my favorite moments. That's why I like watching improv comedy, when it's good, when it's actually good, and I can see that the comedians are in some new place, and they have to be really sharp and really in the moment, and they surprise themselves with what they say, and that's what cracks up the comedian as well, when they surprise themselves. All right. I think it teaches you, ideally, I don't know if it's something that comedy taught me or what, but about about trying to understand, you know, what the people around you, what level of, it's about syncing with different kinds of crowds, right? So it helps you read a room better, that's for sure. It helps you to read the energy of a room, because otherwise you could walk into, because as a comedian you do shows for different people, different cities, different age groups sometimes, and ideally a professional knows how to change his his approach in handling each one of these situations. And now ideally that should make you a better conversationist. One of the things comedy, if you try this as a comedian, which is crowd work, or when you're hosting a show, you're forced to talk to the crowd. A new comedian will just like ask something and then just make a joke immediately, but a more established, more a professional comedian would go past the first 2 3 questions and really get into that person's life, and then make fun of him for it. But ideally in real life, you just ask those questions without making fun of them for it, especially when you meet someone on a plane or something like that. You One of my favorite things about being a comedian is if they recognize you, it's easier to get to a good conversation. It's faster, it's a good icebreaker, you know and that's great to get into conversations now. And they think they're being curious about what I do. I'm actually always more interested in what they're doing, what kind of life they're leading, just because I'm like, you can ask so many questions and they're interested in telling you, not to even make fun of it. They think maybe I'm going to use it for material. I'm just genuinely curious what their life is like. So it helps me to be more interested and curious in people. Yeah.